Okay, so today what I want to discuss is one of the more difficult passages from the parables Jesus taught, which is not a small section of the Gospels that we have. But there's this one story about a man who's referred to as the dishonest manager, the shrewd manager, the dishonest steward, the shrewd steward, various different things. And it's found in the opening of chapter 16 of the book of Luke. And it's important for you to know that it comes right after chapter 15 of Luke, which is the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, in which you have these extravagant giftings, essentially, where you have a person searching all night for a lost coin. You have a shepherd going out of his way to find a lost sheep. And then you have a father who receives a disregarded, excessive son back into his home. In the following after that, you have that there's a rich man who had a manager, and he goes to that manager and says that you've been wasting my possessions. So gather your accounts, put them together, put them in order, because I'm firing you. And this manager says that he's not strong enough to dig ditches and he's too proud to beg. So he goes to two of his clients and he does something where he asks them what their bill is, and then he marks it down, gives it back to them, and then he goes to another one. He asks him what his bill is, marks it down, gives it back, and then goes back. And he says that the owner of the accounts, the owner who had employed the managers, says in verse 8, Master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing. And now we're confused, right? He's been marking down the prices. You'd think that he would punish him, right? You would think that in this context that the manager would be, that the owner of these accounts would be absolutely flabbergasted, would be outraged that he's going to receive less return on his investment. But you have to understand the context, and we're going to examine that now. So if you go to the Middle East now, you will find a very different lending environment than you find here in the West. Part of that is that according to Islamic law and according to Jewish law, in Leviticus and in Exodus, it is forbidden to receive interest on a loan, and it's referred to as usury in Scripture. And actually, it was illegal even in Western circles for a very long time. The idea that I'm going to charge you more than what I've given you. It's supposed to be face-to-face payments. As a result, it is fairly common throughout the ancient Middle East that if I've lent you $100, say, it's illegal for me to then charge you, let's say, 25% interest, right? Or 20% interest on that. But I still want to make a little bit of money. So what I will say to you is I will extend my hand to shake your hand to seal that deal. And I would say, I've loaned you 120, right? And the person would then say, yes, 120. It's a way to get around the law. And that seems like a really odd thing, yes? Well, think about this. In Islam, fermented alcohol is absolutely forbidden, but distilled is not. And so if you visit a place like Abu Dhabi or somewhere like that, you're not going to find a lot of wine, malt liquor, Jack Daniels, anything like that. But you will find things like tequila, and you will find things like vodka because it's distilled instead. They're still drinking alcohol. It's just not fermented. The process for making it is different. So it's something that's fairly common throughout these kinds of cultures, that like finding a way around. Like another instance in scripture that we see is that idolatry in the Jewish temple was absolutely forbidden for obvious reasons. But in Roman culture, emperor worship was fairly common. And so the coins that Rome used for business and transaction had the emperor's face on it. And because of that, that's an image of a supposed deity or the object of something else's worship. The Jews wouldn't allow it into the temple treasury. So what they would do is they'd change that money out for a specific kind of temple currency that's supposed to be one-to-one, right? But if you've ever traveled abroad, you'll know that changing currencies is not one-to-one. Whether that's dollars to yen, dollars to pesos, dollars to euros, it's never one-to-one. You're always either going to be losing or gaining, one or the other. And they found out that they could gouge people in various ways by saying that maybe the temple currency is worth 2 gold coins or 2 copper pennies or whatever. And so they figured out, I can literally gouge people, and it's a way around the law to skirt it without breaking it. So now let's go back to the text. You have a person who's going around. His accounts have been found to be fraudulent. Fraudulent how? Well, when we look at these accounts, notice how he doesn't know, he doesn't have record of what these clients have been charged for their oil or for the grain, right? The wheat. He doesn't know. He only goes to them and says, what deficit do you have? Which is an extraordinarily large amount. You don't just lose track of numbers like this. The likelihood is that this occurs is that he's told to get his accounts in order, and so he does, and he takes those, and then his would have been correct according to what is actually within the law. And then the other person would have been the shake hands, almost like a bookie deal kind of transaction number, and he was telling them to change their amounts to match what is in concert with the law. He's literally bringing their accounts into correct standing, not bringing them out of sorts. And by doing so, would make it so that these people, these vendors to whom are indebted to the original master, would be friendly towards him. Because the conclusion of the parable is, the master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. He's saying that, like, if you've seen the movie Lucky Number 11, maybe you haven't, it's an older movie, but it's got Morgan Freeman, it's got Ben Kingsley, it's a really good one. But it actually talks about overtly how that people that run criminal organizations or lending organizations or whatever like this, they would have a set of books that are legitimate, that are straight up, and then they would have the set of books that are illegitimate, that comprise the ill-gotten gains. And so if somebody comes in from the IRS or from the DEA or some other organization to investigate them, you give them the legitimate copy, and if you have somebody that's within the organization that comes in, you would give them the illegitimate copy because their context of what they're looking for. And I think within reason, like I said, this is one of those that it's very heavily debated, but I think confidently that we're talking about that kind of a conflict, that you have a person who, despite what the law says, saying that usury is illegal, was doing that kind of back room handshake type, yeah, but don't you, like, agreeing with, like I described, and instead, when called into account for it, was aligning himself with the correct, according to what is legitimate. That's what I think. So, I think that one of the main things that we need to learn from this, in fact, even in the wake of some instances like what we're seeing from Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, is that there's a lot of people throughout this world that are handshaking on over the boundary deals. But we don't know about it until their accounts are called into question.